Hey, what can I get you?
Um, Give me a whiskey.
Uh, okay, what kind?
What do you mean?
Bourbon, rye, scotch?
No, I want a whiskey.
Yeah, I know. Bourbon, rye, or scotch?
What's the difference?
Did he just say?
I think you did.
Get out.
Huh?
Oh man, I really hope you guys never actually have to deal with something like that. Just in case you do, maybe you should learn the difference between bourbon, rye, and scotch. So what really is the difference? Whiskey, with or without an E, is basically this. It can be any variety of distilled liquor made from a fermented mash of grains, aged in a wooden cask, mostly oak. And those grains are commonly corn, malted barley, rye, and wheat. And they can be any kind of combination of that, though there are specifics to each kind, and that's actually what makes the difference. So let's take our first one, scotch. Now I've got a couple different ones here. I've got Macallan and Ardbeg, Wee Beastie. If you haven't had this, I definitely wouldn't start here, but yeah, you have this and you'll know you had a peated scotch. Scotch whiskey, no E, is produced and bottled in, you guessed it, Scotland. Its smoky flavor comes from the process by which it's made. Mainly, a barley mash bill is malted and then heated over a peat fire. Scotch can also only be produced in Scotland, hence the name. Kind of obvious, I guess. Next would be bourbon. I've got a bourbon here that is Old Forester 1870. Excellent. Pick it up if you get the chance. Bourbon is an American whiskey, and there are a lot of rules to follow when it comes to an American whiskey or bourbon, or sometimes a straight whiskey you might hear it called. Bourbon has very strict laws regarding its production here in the United States. It must have a mash bill containing at least 51% corn, distilled to no more than 160 proof, aged in a new charred oak barrel, and casked at no more than 125 proof. And based on that, the mash bill will slightly vary based on the producer, the distiller, the brand that they're making, and other variations. So this is what makes an American bourbon. Next on the list is rye. Rye whiskey, which I've got a Templeton 6-year, and proudly enough, Templeton's made just about 40 or 50 miles north of where I live. It is an Iowa whiskey, and it's some pretty good stuff. Rye whiskey is made very much the same as bourbon, but with one major and obvious difference: rye. For it to be a rye, it has to have at least 51% rye. So quite the opposite of bourbon being 51% corn, rye is made up of at least 51% rye. Even though the process of creating whiskeys is very similar, The mash bills, the malting, the yeasting, and fermenting are very highly guarded secrets among distillers. Years, if not decades, go into perfecting the unique taste of each brand. Additionally, distilling and aging lead to these very unique taste notes. Now that you know the difference between bourbon, rye, and scotch, the next thing to learn would be tasting notes. But I'm not going to get into that in this episode. So check back for a future episode when I talk about the tasting notes of bourbon, rye, and scotch. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I really had a lot of fun making it, especially the intro part. Hope that wasn't a little too over the top, but it was fun anyway. So if you would, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, subscribe to my channel for future episodes, and as always, long ashes and full glasses, and we'll see you in the next one. Bacon, this is not the time. This is not the time. No, this is not the time. Now you got to start that all over again. That might go over the